This episode was created with the support of Free FM, Hamilton, New Zealand's community access media organisation. Visit us at freefm.org.nz.
Hello and welcome to another episode of ReThinking Mental Wellbeing. This is our community podcast where we can talk about everything related to depression and anxiety. So my name is Andre and I want to thank you for being with me over the next half an hour as we share the space of lived experience where we can talk about how to live the best version of our authentic life. So, if you're ready, then I'm ready. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back to Rethinking Mental Wellbeing. If this is your first time here, then I welcome you to the space. If you've been here before, then welcome back to the space. There is something deeply natural, almost organic, about having routines and habits within our day. Even biologically, we have rhythms and schedules as a series of routines that your body performs to maintain your health by regulating your body's activities. Things like sleep, blood pressure, body temperature, even when to eat, when to get tired, when to wake, are all set by our biological rhythms. Some of you may have heard of a few of them before. Probably the most recognizable one would be something called the circadian rhythm. This is a biological clock that acts as an internal program that regulates the timing of functions like sleep and awake cycles, when to eat, even your body's temperature and digestion. So routines is a critical part of our biological makeup. And before we modernized our world, we would often live by the rhythm of the setting and the rising of the sun that would tell us when to wake and when to go to sleep. We would live by the predictability of different seasons that would tell us when to move to protect us from the elements. Even the stars were used and still are used to navigate, to predict, and to influence cultures as they describe our destiny, our future, and even our freedom. And so we learnt to use our environments and to identify patterns that could be trusted. We learnt to listen to our biology and to the world around us when it was time to wake, when it's time to move, when our body told us to eat, and when our body told us to rest, all according to natural, biological, and environmental rhythms. And because these biological rhythms were so reliable, we learnt to create routines that were set around the reliability of these patterns. Because routines back in the days of our ancestors were not optional, they were necessary for our survival. Because predictability meant safety, and safety is our number one priority as the precursor for survival. Routines for us is the consistent pattern of what we do that is performed regularly. Routines create a framework in our life of structure, of consistency, and of predictability. This becomes useful for us because it manages our day by putting a framework of predictable actions consistently applied around a familiar structure for the purpose of fostering a sense of control and order and a sense of autonomy in our life, making our life a bit more manageable. And back in our ancestor days, it meant a greater chance of surviving another day because we could use our routines as predictions. And our brain loves predictions. Our brain loves to know what is about to happen, the familiar, the normal, the comfort. And in our modern world, routines also reduce decision-making and what is known as decision fatigue. Routines help us stay focused. Routines reduce stress, helps us align ourselves back to our biological design by promoting better sleep patterns, helps us eat healthier, and helps us to develop better habits that we're going to talk about later in this episode. So I'm hoping you kind of get the idea that routines are a critical part of living a life that is more in harmony to the way that we are designed to live. But there's a catch. This is only true if these routines actually complement our design, lead us towards our needs being met, that enhances our well-being and moves us towards living a more authentic life. Because we also have routines that are self-destructive, that keep us away from getting our needs met, that misalign us from what we are biologically designed to do. An example of this would be staying up late at night, gaming at the expense of sleep, and a million other examples that you can probably think of yourself. And these are examples of routines that serve a purpose, but in the long run isn't very helpful. They move you away and disrupt our routines, the ones that we are biologically designed and we prefer to do. Because these routines don't necessarily move us towards getting our needs met, but instead they have a focus of just trying to stop, avoid, distract, or anesthetize the emotions that we don't want to feel. The routines that we have to avoid the pain that we feel is the wounded part of us trying its best to make us feel safer. These types of activities are things that have worked before. They're things that have made us feel safer. So the next time you reach for the ice cream when you feel stressed or overwhelmed, you do that because at some level it has worked before. It may have given you that sense where you feel a little bit safer or a little bit more comforted. And so your brain will bookmark that activity if it's something that works, that reduces stress. Which kind of makes sense because that follows the reasons why we like routines in the first place. We like routines because of structure, because of stability, because they're familiar, even for comfort and even for safety. But these reasons alone does not mean that our routines are necessarily healthy or helpful for us. So getting our needs met towards living authentically and truthfully within our frequency, within our pace of life, is what we are ultimately aiming for. So this is why routines matter so much now, maybe more than ever before. Because in our world full of endless distractions, constant change, and overwhelming options, routines help ground us. And it does this by providing a framework that gives shape to our day and gives our day structure. And this is where we can consciously start to develop routines in our day and in our life that moves us towards our authentic nature, that moves us towards getting our needs met and moves us towards living a life more in harmony and more in balance with who we are. The trick here, though, is to create healthy routines with the right activity within routines that suit us. In other words, as we've talked about before, just because it's a routine doesn't make it healthy. And having too many routines also doesn't make it healthy. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you are the only one who will know whether your routine, which is the series of activities that you do consistently, is both healthy and helpful for you. And these two criteria of healthy and helpful are really important. This is about listening to your own understanding through awareness and insight to the routines that you have that move you towards authenticity and harmony. In other words, it's good for your mental well-being. It's good for your physical well-being, your emotional, and even your spiritual well-being. So now, if you've ever wondered what is the framework for creating healthy and helpful routines, and what can I wrap these routines around, now you know. Those 4 parts that I mentioned before, mental well-being, physical well-being, emotional and spiritual well-being, are all parts that have to be addressed and paid attention to for a life that is well-rounded as you calibrate your inner world to your outer world so they can harmonize with each other. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And these are the frameworks of your routines that need to harmonize all of these 4 categories together. And how we structure our day with our routines has to be done with purpose and with meaning and consciously. But when you're starting to develop healthy routines, it may be helpful to know that before we practice new routines, We first have to create the space in the room for new routines to take root. This may be where we start to battle with our minds a little bit. So remember that your brain has bookmarked routines that have worked at some level before, and they've become familiar and comfortable and well known to you. So if you're introduced to a new, healthier routine, your brain prefers to take the path of least resistance, and it will try and default to what it knows, the quickest way it knows how, because that's what it's practiced. So starting a new routine is often about showing up first by carving a space of time and energy in your day. And to put this in context of what I mean, and maybe this sounds familiar, I would love to go for a walk every day in nature as part of my routine, but I just don't have the time. Or I would love to spend time in meditation or in prayer, but I just don't have the time. And probably a million other ideas you can think of as well. So rule number 1, when you first want to create new routines, create the space to do them in first. And when you're starting off, this is going to be very subjective to you. Find the amount of time that you can repeat and you can consistently show up for. Because what you are first learning to do is consciously learning to combine time and energy and purpose to this new routine. For some people, this may mean spending 1 minute doing something. For some people, it may be 10 minutes. For some people, it may be an hour. But the criteria of measurement is to ask yourself this question. Can I continually give this amount of time, whatever that amount of time is? Can I continue giving this amount of energy, whatever that amount of energy is? But can I do it consistently and frequently over the next 3 months? If it's 1 minute, then it's 1 minute, but it's consistent. If it's an hour, then it's an hour, but it's also consistent. So remember, you are looking at carving out time to practice, mastering the art of showing up before you master the routine. We have to prioritize these routines that we are purposely putting into place. And this lines up with a quote that I've heard years ago that says that we do what we do at any given time because it's the most compelling thing to do. Not necessarily the most important or the most logical, but the most compelling. And what is important to you will be shown by the beliefs that you hold about you, about the world around you, and about other people. And for a lot of us, there is a conflict between our belief narratives and our authentic nature. Then it will feel very uncomfortable for us. We will feel out of balance, out of harmony with ourselves. We will feel incomplete. And we call this place the distance between where we are and where our authenticity is telling us to be, suffering. So our routines need to complement our authentic nature, not to be in conflict. A routine needs to partner up with getting our needs met so we can live as authentically as we can. Our routines need to harmonize with the strength of our authentic nature, not to suffer within our wounds. And the second thing we need to do when we're creating space to practice showing up is to practice internalizing, to practice feeling things like accomplishments, the sense of achievement, the feeling of creating a structure through your day that aligns with your truth, to practice the feeling of self-respect, of self-kindness as you honor the priority of constructing your routines. And it's helpful to do this every single time you practice. So this may mean for some people writing and journaling what it feels like and the payoff that you got from it. Or it could mean just sitting with the emotions and the feelings that you got from working out that routine. It could be talking to others about the benefits you got from it. But whatever you choose, do it often and do what works. And so you are saying to your biology, this activity, whatever this activity is what I want to bookmark as important. We are very good at internalizing the bad, the unhelpful, the disruptive, and the misleading activities. Because often these type of activities have been aligned to a faster and immediate gratification payoff. So we can internalize unhealthy routines very well, and we have mastered the art of doing that. But we're not so good at internalizing the good routines that we want to establish. So we have to, with purpose and intention, with conscious effort, make internalizing a critical part of this process. And don't feel that you have to start off by overhauling your entire life straight away. Part of making our routines long-lasting and to successfully incorporate them within our life is learning to and getting used to having purposeful routines. So start off with a few, maybe just start off with one, but as long as you make a start. So for instance, if you want to incorporate walking in nature as part of your routine, find somewhere close to you, even if it's starting as just walking around the block, even if it's starting by just walking around your backyard, but do it consistently. And by doing this, you are starting to establish the habit. But consistently also differs from person to person. One person's consistency may be, I want to do this every day. Another person's consistent may be, I can do this 2 or 3 times a week. But start off where you are the most comfortable. And don't worry about the time you spend, because all you're trying to do is to establish it. So whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's an hour, just make sure that you can do it consistently. Because what you do or don't do is the final frontier to what your biology sees as your truth. So start one routine in your time frame, at your pace, for your own purpose. Internalize it, make it your own, do it often. Because your biology understands consistency, and your biology will bookmark what you repeat. And this brings us to the topic of our identity. Your identity is the total sum of who you are as the result of what you do and what you don't do. And your identity is the result of your beliefs and your values. Your identity is also created from your experiences and your interpretation of your experiences. So your identity is wrapped up not only in what you do, but what you do often. So your routines become the framework of your identity that you can manipulate, you can alter, you can change to line up with your authentic nature. So why is this important? Because if all of these things make up your identity, the question now that we ask ourselves is, how do we define our identity? What parts of us do we use to define ourselves with and place more emphasis on? Do we define our identity by other people's opinion? Do we define our identity by our spirituality? Do we define our identity by our trauma and our suffering? And if you're not sure what your identity is, have a look at the title at the top of your scripts that you use to speak to the world through. And the danger of defining our sense of identity by the prioritizing of things that are harmful to us is that we then tend to construct our life by the routines that we have created to enforce this identity, but for the purpose of keeping ourselves safe. And therefore, these routines restrict us because all they do is end up keeping us in a prison with our own suffering as we try to protect ourselves within the company of our own fear and anxiety. And so as we start to define and prioritize our well-being by putting healthy routines in place that honor our physical and emotional and mental and spiritual state, by developing routines that gets our needs met, and by developing routines that allow our authentic nature to be expressed into the world around us, our life starts to take on a different meaning, a different atmosphere, because there's a different framework and a different structure within our life. Not based on what we think we're worth, but because it's our criteria for well-being. It is essential for our quality of life, and it's critical to a life of fulfillment, satisfaction, and contentment. And to make this process easier, our biology has given us the ability to take shortcuts when it comes to effort over time. The amount of effort that it takes to first establish a routine is a lot more than when the routine is fully established. That over time, these routines become a little bit less harder, a little bit less difficult, and a little bit less complicated. This is where habits come into place. These are the actions that we do that require very little mental energy to do them. Habits are your actions almost on autopilot, and just like routines, we have healthy or unhealthy habits. We have habits that lead us towards and help us navigate into the direction of living authentically, of living to our truth, and living to getting our needs met. Or we have habits that are unhealthy, that move us away from our authentic nature. Unhealthy habits will often have a root cause of feeling unsafe, of feeling anxious. Unhealthy habits may avoid, distract, anesthetize, and project from living authentically. But habits ultimately conserve energy, where we don't have to consciously think about every little thing that we're doing throughout the day. Because if we did have to do that, we would use too much energy. So our biology has created a system, almost a shortcut, where you don't have to consciously think about a well-established habit to save energy so you can focus on the more important things. But here's the catch. Your biology does not make that decision on what it needs to shortcut as a habit. It watches what you repeat over and over and over. So that's what it takes as the cue to turn into a habit by doing you a favor. So making that behavior habitual so you don't use up as much energy doing the same thing again. It sounds helpful, right? And absolutely, sometimes it is. But your brain doesn't understand good or bad, healthy or helpful, worthy or not worthy. That's the job of your mind. Your brain understands what you repeat over and over as the confirmation of making that shortcut from conscious behavior to an unconscious habit. And because your biology focuses your priority around safety and getting your needs met, sometimes there may be a conflict of priority, where one habit may become the priority at the expense of a need. An example of this is that we have all had experiences in the past that have made us prioritize safety over everything else, even at the expense of getting our needs met. For example, if we have a belief that I need to keep myself safe, so I'm never going to be close to people, but by doing that, it comes at the cost of getting my need for connection met. But that doesn't stop us having the hunger to get this need of connection met, because we will still feel what I call the hunger pain of not getting that need met. And so often we will spend our time trying to stop the hunger, and in particular, in this example, the hunger pain of connection, which is what we call loneliness. But our priority becomes, I just need to stop the pain. I just need to stop the hunger. And what we should be doing is finding a way to get the need of connection met. So I hope that makes sense. There's a different focus. We're not focused on trying to stop the hunger pain by distraction and avoidance and suppression. We're finding ways to authentically get that need met. So we will do whatever we can while we are trying to keep ourselves safe to just stop feeling lonely. So to circle back around on how this relates to habits, we will create a lifestyle that will consist of habits around trying to feel as safe as we can in a space where our needs have to be met. But sometimes we will confuse safety for comfort. And to understand the difference between the two, think of comfort as a way to try and soothe something that hurts. Think of safety as the absence of danger or harm. So if we have a lot of habits that focuses on feeling comfortable, we are wanting that comfort as a way to soothe what is uncomfortable or painful. But we still have a focus on the pain and on the suffering because we haven't got our needs met. But then our priority is about learning how to avoid, distract, and minimize the pain. Our need to be safe and to feel safe, that's our biological and authentic state of preference. This is where we can focus on our well-being, on getting our needs met in a healthy way, and we can learn to prioritize living authentically instead of living a life trying to avoid or distract, as we seek to satisfy the hunger pains of our unmet needs. When we are born, we have a brain that contains billions of neurons. For a lot of these neurons, they're not fully connected, What connects these neurons to each other through these pathways, allowing neurons to communicate to each other, is through the experiences that we have in life. This is what is known as experience-dependent neuroplasticity. So the shaping and the wiring of your brain is strongly linked to our experiences that we have. The shaping of your brain, the ability to change and adapt by making connections stronger or weaker, is what we call neuroplasticity. So why is this important now? Because from the moment you're born, over the next few years after you're born, your brain is like a sponge. It takes on everything it sees, everything it hears, everything it touches, tastes, and smells. And it's interpreting what we are sensing by creating neural pathways and connections within our brain. And we've achieved some of our greatest feats of neuroplasticity before the age of 5. For instance, our learning to walk, our learning to talk, our writing, the ability to pick up a knife and a fork and a spoon to eat, the ability to know how to socially interact, and literally millions of other things all helped us to map out our brain, to form connections that will wire our brain through the repetition, through finding patterns and rhythms that tell us and interpret to us what life and the world and us and other people are like. And so your brain has a safeguard, almost a layer of protection to look after the things that we repeat over and over. And it makes this connection, as we repeat it consistently over time, thicker. And this is what we call myelinated. This layer of protection reinforces the connection set on repeat, without using so much energy and without using as much focus, even without using as much awareness. You may have heard the myth that a leopard can't change its spots, and that's exactly what it is. It's a myth. The implication meaning that you can't change the older you get. And I want to make it quite clear that that is incorrect, because as a human being, you are wired to learn, to develop, and to change and to grow. But as an adult, this has to be more focused, with more intention, with more effort, within our surroundings and our environment that are helpful for us to learn. So that's all I've got for this episode. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you've got something useful from this discussion. And if you have any questions you would like us to discuss on future episodes, then please email me at rethinkingmentalwellbeing@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. So until then, go well, go in peace, have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
This Free FM podcast was brought to you with support from New Zealand On Air.